The first time I received a violation notice from the HOA, Homeowners Association, I thought it was a mistake. The second time, I started feeling annoyed. By the fifth time, I understood exactly what was happening. Madeline Carter, the powerful HOA president, had declared war on my sister, Emily Walker. A yellow notice was taped to the front door, its bold, printed words making my blood boil. This structure violates the aesthetic standards of the community. Immediate removal required. I crumpled the paper in my hand, turning just in time to see Emily rolling her wheelchair up the very ramp that the HOA had been hunting down. Another love letter from our beloved dictator? Emily scoffed, exhaustion clear in her voice. I looked at her. 6 months ago, Emily had been a strong soldier, serving in dangerous operations overseas. A roadside IED explosion had taken her legs, ending her proud military career. But instead of coming home to peace, my sister had to fight another battle, right here in this neighborhood. "Do you think Madeline has nothing better to do than spy on our house?" I muttered, pulling back the curtain to peek outside. Across the street, Madeline stood there, phone in hand, snapping pictures of our home like some self-appointed detective. She always appeared in designer gym wear, oversized sunglasses, and an air of entitlement. "I'm so tired, Jake," Emily sighed, rubbing her temples. "I just want to go to work, come home and live in peace." But peace wasn't an option as long as Madeline Carter sat in that HOA president's chair. Before building the ramp, we had followed every rule. We hired a licensed contractor, obtained a city permit, and even chose a color that matched our home to maintain the neighborhood's aesthetic. But Madeline didn't care. She kept finding ways to make things difficult. Every HOA meeting about the ramp was scheduled at a time Emily couldn't attend, either during her physical therapy sessions or right in the middle of her night shifts. Things reached a boiling point when I caught Madeline outside our house at 6 a.m., measuring the ramp like she was preparing for war. "What are you doing?" I demanded. She flinched for a second but quickly regained her composure. "Just doing my duty," she said with a fake smile. "Ensuring compliance." That was when I knew we had to prepare for a real fight. I started documenting everything, saving paperwork, recording conversations, and installing security cameras to monitor Madeline's every move. One early morning, while helping Emily into the car for work, I saw Madeline talking to 2 men in suits. One was taking notes, the other was snapping photos of our ramp. "I don't like this," I told Emily. "Maybe it's time she knows exactly who she's messing with." Emily shook her head. "I won't use my status to get special treatment," she said firmly. "We'll fight this the right way." But I knew that the law alone wasn't always enough to stop people like Madeline. That night, I checked the security footage and saw something that made my blood run cold. Madeline was standing outside our house talking to a construction contractor. I turned up the volume. Her voice came through clear as day. "I want the bulldozers here first thing in the morning. We've got approval." Approval? I had never seen any such order. I stayed up all night, researching disability access laws, trying to find a way to stop what was coming. But no matter how prepared I was, nothing could stop the nightmare that unfolded the next morning. The sound of heavy machinery woke me up. I rushed outside, my heart pounding, as I saw a massive bulldozer parked right in front of our house. Construction workers in reflective vests were measuring the ramp while Madeline stood in the middle, holding a stack of papers like a trophy. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted. Madeline turned to me, smugness all over her face. "I have an emergency demolition order from the HOA. This structure is non-compliant." She waved the document in front of me, pulling it back quickly when I tried to grab it. "Madeline, we have city approval," she smirked. "The city isn't the HOA, Jake, and it's my responsibility to protect the property values of this neighborhood." Behind her, the bulldozer's engine roared to life. "This is illegal," I warned. Madeline held up another piece of paper. I sent the notice 3 weeks ago. See? It has a signed receipt. I yanked the paper from her hand. The signature wasn't mine, it wasn't Emily's either. It was a forgery. I frantically called Emily, but her phone was off. She was in a closed-door meeting at the government office. Looking around, I saw neighbors gathering, watching the scene unfold in stunned silence. I took a deep breath and declared, loud enough for everyone to hear, "If you do this, you're violating federal disability rights laws. Be ready for a lawsuit." Madeline scoffed, but I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. And then a siren blared. I turned. 3 black SUVs were pulling into the neighborhood, followed by 2 state police vehicles. Car doors swung open, and Emily emerged, wearing her full military uniform, medals gleaming on her chest. The entire neighborhood went dead silent. Madeline's face turned pale. Emily rolled her wheelchair forward, locking eyes with Madeline. "Would you like to explain why you're demolishing a legally approved structure belonging to a disabled veteran?" Madeline was speechless. Emily gave her a cold smile. "You're about to get more than just a violation notice, Madeline." No one in the neighborhood had ever seen Madeline Carter lose control. But the moment Emily appeared in full military uniform, she stood frozen as if she had just been stripped bare in front of a crowd. Madeline stammered. Emily rolled her wheelchair forward, her gaze ice cold. "I've called my lawyer, and you should know that what you did could constitute property damage and a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. I saw the construction workers pause, hesitating as they glanced at each other. A man in a reflective vest stepped forward. He seemed to be the site manager. "Mrs. Carter, we were told there was a legal permit." "There is no legal permit," I cut in, holding up the forged document for everyone to see. "This is a fake, which could lead to a criminal investigation." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The neighbors were no longer just bystanders. They started whispering, and a few even took out their phones to record. A police officer approached, looking down at Madeline. "Mrs. Carter, it seems we'll need you to come down to the station to clarify this document." Madeline took a deep breath, then turned to me with a look of pure hatred. "You think you can win, Jake?" I crossed my arms, meeting her glare head-on. "Number." "I don't think." "I know." The officer extended his hand. "Mrs. Carter, please come with us." Madeline's face hardened, but she had no choice. As she was led away, I turned to Emily and saw my sister exhale in relief. "Finally," she murmured. But I knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 5. Madeline Strikes Back. 2 weeks later, the neighborhood seemed peaceful again, but I knew Madeline Carter wouldn't go down without a fight. And sure enough, a lawsuit from her lawyer arrived at my doorstep early in the morning. Plaintiff, Madeline Carter. Defendants, Emily Walker and Jake Walker. Cause, defamation and emotional distress. I clenched my jaw. She really wants to play this to the end? Emily skimmed the document before setting it down. I'm not surprised, but she doesn't know I've been prepared for this all along. My sister had been on the battlefield. A civil lawsuit was just another fight she was ready to take on. I immediately called our lawyer, and within an hour we were in an emergency meeting at her office. Rebecca, our sharp-witted middle-aged attorney, leaned back in her chair after reading the lawsuit. A classic case of a sore loser, she smirked. But we're not just going to defend, we're going to counterattack. Emily nodded. I want to countersue her for intentionally violating the ADA and forging documents to destroy my property. Rebecca smiled. I like your fighting spirit, Emily. And just like that, the legal battle officially began. For the next 3 months, Madeline Carter spread false rumors about us throughout the neighborhood. She pulled every string she had, trying to pressure us, but no one believed her anymore. Then came the day of the trial. At the county courthouse, Emily sat in her wheelchair at the plaintiff's bench, facing Madeline, who no longer looked as confident as before. Madeline's lawyer presented a weak argument about the emotional distress she had suffered, but when it was Rebecca's turn to respond, she completely cornered her. "Mrs. Carter, are you aware that under the ADA, any act that obstructs a disabled person's access can be subject to criminal charges?" Madeline's face paled. Rebecca continued, "And can you explain why the violation notice you presented contains a forged signature?" Madeline remained silent. The judge banged the gavel. "Based on the evidence presented, the court finds Mrs. Madeline Carter guilty of violating the ADA and falsifying documents. Her lawsuit is dismissed. She is fined and ordered to compensate the defendants for financial damages." I clenched my fist in victory, while Emily simply let out a quiet breath of relief. Madeline stood up, her face flushed with rage. "I won't forget this," she hissed before storming out of the courtroom. But I knew, from this moment on, she had lost all power. 3 months later, Madeline Carter resigned as HOA president. No one re-elected her. Emily's wheelchair ramp was rebuilt, this time stronger than ever. One day, as I was watering the plants in our yard, Emily rolled out, placing a cold beer on the table beside me. "We won," I chuckled. "You never lose, do you?" Emily took a sip of her beer, looking down the street where Madeline Carter once stood, giving orders. Now that street belonged to us. This story carries some important lessons. 1. Justice prevails. Madeline Carter tried to manipulate and abuse her power, but in the end, the truth came to light. Those who act unjustly and break the law will eventually face the consequences. 2. Never submit to injustice. Jake and Emily refused to back down. They fought for their rights, no matter how powerful their opponent seemed. This shows that perseverance can create change. 3. Legal knowledge is a powerful weapon. Emily and Jake didn't just rely on emotions, they used the law to fight Madeline. This highlights the importance of understanding legal rights to protect oneself. Communities can change. At first, many neighbors believed Madeline, but as the truth emerged, they turned against her. This proves that while society can be unfair at times, justice will eventually be recognized. 5. Arrogance and greed lead to downfall. Madeline Carter believed she could manipulate everything, but her overconfidence and abuse of power led to her defeat. This is a lesson in humility and respect for others. In the end, this story encourages courage, persistence, and the importance of justice in society.